think this is where, because the moment you spend that money to go into an institution that is supposed to give you guidance for what happens afterwards, I think there is a big gap there in that institution, that educational institution, that if they don't change, then also the next generation, every year, any students trying to apply for those also need to go in much more clearly as to, well, what exactly is it that I want from a degree in performance, right? Is it necessary for you to have a degree? Yo-Yo went to Harvard. Go to conservatory. So anyways, I mean, I do think that there's a, I think this is a really, it's a really sort of burning thing that's also in my brain as I keep watching all of these students and parents, and I've got, and I'm in an age where I have a lot of friends around me that are all looking, some of them are looking at kids like, do I send my child to conservatory? I'm like, what is their dedication to that instrument that they're going to want to dedicate hours and hours of their time to perfect an instrument where they might end up being disappointed if they're not guided in the right way. Maybe the word is disillusioned, right? So I mean, I don't know. I've been out of school for so long, but my connection has only been from the outside to sort of getting the students after they are still in it or after they get out of it.
I mean, I feel like I'm just kind of like a true believer. The same statement you made, you can make about any major. I feel like, I don't know. Take the major I was going to apply for before I decided to apply for piano. I was going to be a psych major. Does that mean that every single psych major is going to be a psychologist or psychiatrist or therapist? Probably not, right? I mean, how many psych majors are there in New York alone, at NYU, Hunter, Queens? You think about all the colleges that are here, tons, right? If you look from a piano, as a pianist, from a piano perspective, there are 7 schools in New York New York City that teach piano, right? Let's say, I don't know, maybe 100 graduate every year, maybe 150, depending, right? Maybe 200, I'm not sure how many exactly. But odds are, most of them probably aren't going to be concert pianists, if any, right? Because there's just only so many different vacancies that they can fill, because there's artists that are concerting artists for the last 30 or 40 years. But it depends, what they want to do. Like I said, for me, like performing locally is good enough, right? And I'm still doing that somewhat successfully, right? But then other people, they kind of realize what they want to do along the way. I feel like pursuing this major is not necessarily a bad thing for anyone, because the question becomes, okay, what now, rather than what if, right? I feel like if you don't really find that answer out unless you try it.
Well, I mean, look,
because you might be surprised if you told me that I would end up where I am today 7 years ago. I wouldn't believe a word that you said. If I thought that I was going to go in a completely different direction, that I think I was going to be a concert pianist ever, I don't think so. Did I have dreams of that at some point? Maybe, but I feel like every one of us maybe did have that dream at some point, but
that's the thing, right? Like, did you go into these schools knowing that my goal is to be a concertizing, like a concert artist? This is what
I don't think I did.
Because I'm just curious, like, did all of y'all go in saying I'm going to be a concert as a string, right? As a pianist, you're just much more limited. So as a string player, as a brass, as a woodwind, your actually options are a lot more, right? But did you know that was your option? Like, for example, we had an amazing violinist a couple of my first early days when I started in the business. He was already in the organization before I joined. And he, brilliant violinist. And then through the career, he always wanted to be a performer, but his goal was always so set on being a soloist. Then he realized, oh, you know what? I'm actually more comfortable being in a chamber ensemble. So then he swapped and he started to join, he was with the Juilliard string quartet at one point, and then now he went to, I think he's with another string quartet. But like that, to him, he knew that he still wanted to perform professionally, but rather than just be in a solo, and he knew, like, he was like very, and he was offered so much, he was offered a lot of concertmaster positions around, like, with different orchestras, but he just said no, right? Because he was very clear that that is not what he wanted to do.
Well, I feel like I always wanted to
discover chamber. And so I think that's also now, like, because, like, are you being given those options, right? Like, did you go in knowing, like, okay, this is, as like I said, aside from the piano, you have so much options, right? Like, did you go and said, I'm going to be an orchestra, like, are you going to be okay then just to be in an orchestra, right? Like that's like that's another question. Like, is your ego okay to say, I can't make it as a soloist, so I will now just join an orchestra position and get a regular paycheck?
Well, for me, I feel like I actually, before I went to college, I knew, well, master, I knew I would never make it as a solo pianist.
Mm.
Actually, that's like the thing that I know when I
Mm.
went to grad school. But I did my master anyway because I was trying to find out what other paths is like.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I realized, okay, if I will never make it as a solo pianist, then I feel like I would rather not keep doing this, because I do feel like I feel like if I want to do it, then I want to do it the best. I want to be a solo pianist. And I knew I will never make it.
Yeah.
That's reality check.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, going into college, like, I mean, growing up, obviously, like a lot of people, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be a soloist for sure. And then after, like, over the years, I realized that actually the market is so saturated that, like, even like, actually landing an orchestra job is like a huge thing. And I see like basically so many like of the most like insane players, like they, in my mind, like they're good enough to be soloists on their own, but they just go and get the orchestra job, and that is like a huge thing.
Yeah, because
if they're able to do that.
I'm sorry?
If they're able to do that. I said if they're able to do that, because I mean, even that's a highly saturated field,
Yeah, because I mean, and we're very lucky in America where we have like hundreds of orchestras, like hundreds of like quote unquote professional orchestras. Obviously, we've got the tier A, B, C, the one that are union, the one that are not union, the one that are just pickup orchestras. That's getting different musicians from the different from the different cities depending on the performance. So we are in so many ways, we are actually very, very we are very lucky, in America, to have all these orchestras as an option, and it's still very competitive, right? And then of course all the various different ensembles trying to make it out there. And so even in that path, even in that path of these chamber music, it's also still very competitive. How many chamber ensembles are out there? Like tons and tons and tons. And I've worked with many chamber ensembles, like string quartets, trios, that also did not survive, and they're very talented, right? And I think, and then, like, I mean, going back to your comment, like, and again, I'm not disregarding your degree, like, at all. I'm just saying, like, what are they doing to prepare you for the real world? And I think I want to challenge the schools to think about that, and also just to challenge the people, next generation coming up. Like, do you actually really need to do you really need that conservatory degree to get to where you want to go? And of course, there's many different arguments. If you're very clear about what you wanted to do, yes, maybe that's a really right path for you. But it's about thinking very clearly, right? And something like a psych psych is a much broader. Psych, regardless of what you do, you don't have to be a psychologist, but you can be psych profile. Your degree can be used in so many different fields.
Fair point.
Right?
But also, like, one thing I want to point out is, like, for piano, like, you literally started learning this instrument when you were, like, young. But, like, if you're applying to, like, computer science, you don't learn computer science when you're, like, 4. Right?
Exactly.
Like, it's a huge investment of money and energy that inevitably that you have a high expectation after you get into, like,
call
what
return of investment, ROI. It is. It's called ROI, right? It's a real term that they use in business finance and in many places, because what is my return of investment in anything that I do? You know, parents are looking at it like, what is the ROI for my kids? Right?
I guess, like, you don't really know before you actually get into, like, because I feel like my parents and so am I, like, we never know how it's going to turn out to be when I first started at 4 years old. And then they kind of just say, it's kind of like cat in the box. Like, you never know what will happen. But, like, I do want to say, like, getting into, like, a music degree do have you, like, more connections to the people. That it's a college, like, degree. Education is a great platform for you to reaching out for multiple things. So I do not regret going to get my music degree. I think it's really based on, like, a personal experience.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna two friends, very different. One is a friend who has a son and she went to school, but she ended up not studying music, but she went to like a art school in Taiwan, played the piano, and she never made it as such. But now then she has kids of her own, and then she's been pushing her son to go and to play the violin. Like, ever since he was little, he's just, mom is like on him about practicing, spends hundreds of dollars to get private teachers, and he went to like a performing arts high school in California. And I'm like, do you really want him to go the conservatory route? Because I've heard him play, and I'm sorry to say he is like, he's good, but he will not make it. But also because I him a few. No, I mean, no.
We all need that. We all need that person when we are young. Like, I knew someone to tell me
we
that.
feel bad. Like, I remember we've gone on vacations together, and she would make the poor child bring the violin and on vacation. Like, you have to practice.
Come on.
Right? And I think she's just trying to live vicariously through her kid, because she didn't make it, and so she's trying to see, and I think that is not healthy. And so even like, and on the other hand, like my other friend, my junior high school and high school friend, she's talented, and she went to, where'd she go? She did Juilliard, and then she did Yale, so the whole 9 yard, and actually knows a lot of the people a lot of all the professional pianists. But she also knew that she actually decided not to go the concertizing route, and rather instead she now owns a music institute in Texas. And she doesn't perform, actually. She's not trying to live out her dream of performing at all. But she still practices, and her kids, one plays the piano and one plays the cello. But she doesn't force them. Like, they all decided they wanted to do it. They both play the piano, but then the son decided to play the cello. And the daughter, I keep telling her, I said, if she ever decides to go down just come and talk to me, because she's good. Like, she's really good. Not good because she's technically good, but there's that sensibility and her musicality that she gets. Whereas the son is good, but he's just good. He's just good, right? And being in this business long enough, you know to tell the difference, because I'm looking at a perspective of like, okay, I'm looking at a perspective of, are you going to make it in the business? Not whether you sound great, so you're going to be really good. And she also is like, she has no desire to make, she doesn't force her kids. She's not trying to tell her kids to go to conservatories whatsoever. And none of them is going to pursue music. So I think at the end, just circling back and wrapping this up, I think the for me is like, I really do want to say and challenge to the schools is that, you guys have to really start thinking and deep down really look at, what are you doing for this? Are you preparing your students enough for the real world?
I think this goes back to a problem that I feel, I don't know, I can't really speak for any other schools, but I feel like American schools have this problem where they don't really focus, at least in our world, right? I feel like they don't really focus on the problems that we're going to have after school. They want to fill quotas.
Yeah.
Right? And the thing is, like, the best solution would just be to minimize enrollment, really. And that would solve the issues. But they don't want to do that because that would be giving them money.
Yeah.
And schools in Europe are much harder to get into based off of that because they don't rely on tuition to function.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyways, it was a great conversation. It was very stimulating. And we will see everyone in our next conversation. Bye.